Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by John Boy Media. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. Got an interview, first interview of the offseason. We got our good friend, Zack Rosenblatt of NJ.com. Justin, how are you?
Good. Fun conversation with Zack, good friend of the program. One of the only beat reporters that consistently does talk with fans on social media. I think he's very smart because he was new. He came in here, he realized, there's like a really good community of Giants fans and Giants fans on Twitter. Let's communicate with them. He even wrote a story on snacks. So he's a good friend of the pod, good friend of the program. He really also really did a deep dive into some player pieces this year. So we got the chance to hear about like, what's Leonard Williams like? What's Logan Ryan like? So that was a lot of fun, a lot of good convos with him.
Yeah, it was fun. And we started having a little more like any interview. It's like the first 20 minutes you're talking about serious, like, what do the Giants do about Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson? And then in the end, we're talking about Little Caesars all over again. So
Yep.
that was fun. Before we get into that, the combine got pretty much canceled, Justin. I mean, it's essentially canceled. Their pro days are going to be more than what they usually are, but it's still going to be on a virtual level. That sucks, man. Like, combine week is so much fun. Like, it's one of the most fun weeks of the year. It's like it's just like football heaven is combine week. I mean, we do 3 episodes a week that week. We're clipping 40. Like, we are having the time of our lives, and they just took it away from us.
I had my first million view video because of combine week.
Jeff Okudah
and Jordan Reed. Jeff Okudah doing Jeff Okudah's footwork where he was backpedaling and whatever. And I put that to Smooth Criminal, Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal, and it worked, and million views. So combine week is big. It's fun.
My first million view video was for Talking Nets. It was Kyrie missing a game-winning shot in his first game as a Net.
Yeah, opening night last year. Yeah.
And then my other one was Saquon stiff-arming the guy versus Detroit.
Yeah, isn't the account like the check down embedded that?
I see that one randomly all the time. Like, I still will get likes on that tweet every once in a while.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
tough. We this year we would have live streamed for like the entire weekend too of the combine. We would have just hung out. Stinks.
It's so frustrating. So freaking frustrating. I hate this stupid ass virus. I can't believe I remember in March. Remember the conversations we were having in March to start the show? Like the stupid conversations we're having about COVID, where I was like 2 weeks in. I was like, I think people are just going to stop caring. And it's like, we're just going to go back to normal, like right away. Like, I can tell with people. And we're in freaking January, and it's still freaking here. I want to whip its ass.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to stink. My birthday's in March.
My birthday's on Friday.
Oh, your birthday's on Friday?
Yeah, how about that? Look at the kind of person I am, where you go to tell a story about your birthday, and then I'm like, no, my birthday. That's a really egomaniac thing of me.
No, it's important now that I know, and that's good. And it's fine. I forgive you for that.
Andrew Thomas's birthday too.
Do you share a birthday with Andrew Thomas?
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be. This match in heaven, and you're the destiny of you two will always be tied together. But my birthday's on March 11th, and that was around the time where I fully realized that, okay, yeah, we're in a global pandemic. So it's going to stink this year. This is an egotistical comment too. It's going to stink this year that it's going to be like, 1 year ago today. And so now my birthday will be ruined 2 years in a row.
Yeah. I mean, the worst thing, people will get offended, but I was going to say the worst thing about this virus is no combine. But people are like,
it's not the worst thing.
We'll get those comments, and it's like, well, obviously. So, but it does, the combine, and I before was like a combine doesn't matter guy. Oh, you got to go by the film. And then seeing some guys flourish who had good combines, but maybe not the greatest film. I was going into this combine being like, I'm going to put a more emphasis on the combine. Like, I want to see, the vertical jump of offensive linemen just as much as I want to see the shuttle. And you know what? 40 time does matter for wide receivers.
Yeah.
Like, I was going into the combine being like, guys are going to fluctuate where I view them by this, and we just don't get that. So, I mean, we'll get the time. We'll probably get the times and stuff out of pro days, and as much as we'll get as much as we can possible out of it. But it's just not the same as having that one centralized event of the combine.
Yeah, because there's also a lot more pressure when everybody's in the same room, and on your on your Alabama Pro Day, Jalen Waddle's going to be the fastest guy in the building, but at the NFL Combine, he may not be the fastest guy in the building because all of the best athletes who are in that same age range are in that building. So sucks, but we'll talking Giants versus the world, right, Bobby?
Talking Giants versus the world. DM me if you want the stickers.
Show the sticker. Show the sticker right now. Say something.
And you get a regular Talking Giants sticker too. $2 for one of each. My favorite sticker. I just put one on my truck. Ford Ranger. All right. We're ready to just kick it to the interview?
Kick it to the interview.
All right. Here's our good friend, Zack Rosenblatt.
All right. We want to welcome you back to the show. And now we have on from NJ.com, it's a very good friend of the program at this point. We've had him on twice. He has finished his first year covering the New York Football Giants. And in my opinion, my unbiased opinion, Zack Rosenblatt did a better job out of anybody else covering the Giants this year. NJ.com, Zack Rosenblatt. Zack, how are you? It is great to have you on for the first time this offseason.
Well, I think I'm just going to log off now because I can't really beat that compliment you just gave me. That was really nice. It's only going down from here. Yeah. So.
Justin's a good compliment guy. I'm the opposite. It's like complimenting people is like really hard for me to do, but it's like I just like kind of like give you like hand signs, like good job, man. But,
yeah, good job out there.
But I'll retweet something like that. That's my like attaboy for
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys. I always like coming on with you guys.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Sure.
Bobby Skinner, you start us off.
So, I mean, this is a basic question, dude, but what was it like, your first year on the beat with, first full year on the beat with the Giants, but doing it with COVID? Like I can't, it's hard for me to comprehend like how much different your guys' job was. Like, what was that like? And like, what were some of the challenges or even like maybe some advantages or like what is something like you took away from this year? It's like, man, that was really different.
Oh man. I think we talked about this even before the season, but the thing that I definitely missed the most was like the ability to be in the locker room with the guys and like getting to know the players more. We can't get to know these guys via Zoom. Especially because, this isn't like under Joe Judge's watch, this isn't the type of team that's going to like say all that much in press conferences outside of like Logan Ryan, who has kind of leeway to do what he wants. Not do what he wants, but you guys know what I mean. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I miss, just the ability to talk to guys. And that's where you find a lot of stories and where you can work on something and, you kind of do it without having to like, blow up your spot on a press conference. So like, I definitely missed that aspect of it. And, the fans not being at the games was just, I didn't realize how weird, I didn't even like consider how weird it would be until it actually happened. It like just zapped all the energy from the, like just watching games. Like it seemed like the TV broadcast kind of, faked it pretty well. Yeah. Made you think that it was like an actual thing, but like there, they score a touchdown and there's just like no noise, like there's nothing going on anywhere. And it just really felt like a scrimmage a lot of the time. So I'm looking forward to some form of normalcy in that sense. But in terms of like, I don't know if positives are the right word, but like just like forcing me to go out of my way to find stories away from the building was kind of the gist, working the phones and calling a lot of people, talking to, friends of friends of players and stuff like that. And just trying to find, human interest stories and cool stuff away from the game because everybody kind of was hamstrung by the situation. Like everybody was kind of dealing with the same thing. So you had to, find your own lane. And that's something I enjoy doing anyway, making those calls, but it definitely was emphasized more in a season like this.
Yeah, and I'll ask you this kind of in a little bit too when we start talking about some player stories and we kind of maybe stray away from the news a little bit. But I was most impressed like with you as a beat reporter because we talked to you before the season, and even we talked to other beat reporters that said relationships with the players. That is not that like it's just not happening this year. You can't create a relationship with somebody through Zoom, and especially with the way that the Giants did have it set up this year. Not seeing faces, et cetera, et cetera. It's tough. So I admire you the fact that you were able to write these stories about the lives of players, like very detailed, intimate stories of players' lives, and you pulled it off miraculously. Which is awesome. We'll get to that though. I do want to ask you about how often were you at the stadium? Was there a point where I think maybe some beat reporters were going to games and it's like, well, why am I doing this? And were they playing back in the New York groove after Giants scored touchdowns? Wasn't that often this year, but were they still playing back in the New York groove in between commercial breaks?
Honestly, I should have paid more attention to that because I honestly I can't remember if they did that or not. Because I'm writing and all that stuff, and the crowd noise, the fake crowd noise was actually quite loud. Honestly, it was kind of annoying. But I'm sorry. What was the question? I got distracted.
How often were you going to the stadium?
Yeah. I went for every home game. It kind of like there was some sense of normalcy going on, like, getting ready, getting dressed up, driving to the stadium. I didn't like, some guys were still wearing suits and stuff. I wasn't.
I was
going
to say, are you a suit man?
I like that. I don't do it like every game. I like doing it for like big games and looking nice if it's like a national thing or whatever. I was a little more casual, like still like button downs and jeans or khakis or whatever. Or slacks. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed going to the stadium for the games. The crowd definitely dwindled in terms of the beat as the season went on. It started off with most of the beat, and by the end there was probably, it was like a deserted press box. In terms of Giants beat writers, there's probably only like 5 or 6 going to the games by the end of the year. And then like the occasional opposing beat writer, there wasn't a lot of people traveling this year either. So like the press box was definitely dead. Like, and that part was definitely weird. Like there was just a select group of us and we're all spread out by 6 feet.
There were some late nights, Zach,
yes,
where I was talking with Snacks and, I'm a couple cold slices of pizzas deep on a Friday night. And especially when we're approaching week 17, where that's it was virtually a do or die game with, we needed some help from our friends. But Snacks and I, we were just talking like, can we DM Zach and just try to intimidate him with our connection with him to try and get us into the stadium? And I thought about it, morning would come and I'm like, no, that's not right. But then, I start eating at night and I get a few cold slices of pizza in and I wanted to do it, but I didn't.
I appreciate, well, early in the season, I just as a joke, I tweeted like a photo of the stadium and I drew like a stick figure with red hair. And I said, oh, look, Snacks stuck in.
I like that. Well, Justin reminded me, next year, can you give us the phone number for the opposing coaches, like a press conference with the media, so we can kind of like screw with that a little bit?
I don't think I get in a lot of trouble for that, but that does sound amazing, especially if it's like an annoying coach or something like that. Like, I'm sure.
I was going to say, if Philly had kept their same guy, we may have been had to force our way.
Hey, well, one of my last Eagles press conference. I mean, this kind of makes me think of that. One of my last like Eagles towards the end of the 2019 season, Doug, it kind of went viral a little bit. Doug Peterson was having one. I think it was after Cowboys game, or maybe it was after Giants game, I believe. And a drunk Eagles fan somehow snuck into the press conference, or maybe he like won a contest or something, and he started like shouting out like, "Great win, Doug!" And he said, "How's it feel beating Eli Manning?" It was like something like that. And Doug like finally caught on after a little while because this guy was just like trying to shout questions at him, and the security removed him, and it was just like quintessential drunk Philly fan just shouting. And I imagine you guys doing that to Doug though, being like, "Doug, why'd you take him out last year?" That was really cool.
Oh, I would just be like, "Hey, Doug, have you learned how to drink out of a water bottle? In this past year or something like that." Yeah, my all-time favorite was the Seahawks Super Bowl when Malcolm Smith is doing his press conference. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Some guy just grabs the mic and just investigate 9/11. 9/11 was perpetrated within our own government. Investigate 9/11, and then just walks off.
Oh my! No, I did not see that.
It's an all-time. I might have to pull it up for you guys, but so I guess we got to know, but maybe we'll talk to you off air and we'll get a yes out of you. So we do have to talk about some of the current affairs with the Giants before we do go into some stories on these guys. And the one that we talked about a lot this year is, how are they keeping Garrett? Like I can make a case for it, but it's like, what do you think that dynamic is? Because Joe Judge had his run in with Mark Colombo, and those two are Colombo and Garrett were a thing. What is that? Can you get any sense of that dynamic between Judge and Garrett? Is it truly like because, and I hate to I'm taking 20 minutes asking a question, but I was starting to be like, okay, maybe this is more Judge than Garrett. And then you see Kitchens come in and open it up a little bit with Colt McCoy as QB, and then you kind of go back like, oh, maybe it is more Garrett. Like, what is that dynamic like to where they think they can make it work?
I think you said you could come up with some reasons for it, and I think those reasons are the obvious ones, and it's this whole the cliche of continuity, which I know you guys do, at least Justin I know doesn't. I'm not sure how Bobby feels about it, but I think how it's kind of ridiculous to just say you need to bring the guy back just for the sake of bringing him back. But I think that is part of their thought process. I think they obviously like Jason Garrett more than the fan base does. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hired him in the first place. And I think they're factoring the whole thing. The weird offseason, losing Saquon. I think it's pretty obvious that it all fell apart when Saquon went down, because I think he had all of his eggs in the Saquon basket, and then he was thrown for a loop when he got hurt after 2 weeks. So I think that was a big factor. And I just think that they kind of almost like the Daniel Jones thing. They want to just give him a chance where he has everything at his disposal, and clearly they should have better weapons next year. And the continuity thing, they're committed to Daniel Jones for next year, and so it's going to be a make or break year for both of them, I think. Right. So I think they're kind of tying Daniel Jones and Jason Garrett's fates together. Whether that's a good idea or not, I don't know. I think everybody else can be the judge about that, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have brought him back personally. I've written plenty about this, about all the problems with the offense. And I think I saw Justin tweet about just adding good players doesn't necessarily mean his scheme's going to be better. He might just be using the same scheme with better players. So there's definitely reason for concern. I think, he deserves a shot to show what he can do with a full offseason to install his scheme and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to seeing what a different offense coordinator would look like, whether it was Kitchens or Joe kind of digging into the Patriots tree and finding somebody else or whatever it was. But I mean, I guess it hasn't necessarily been confirmed he's coming back, but they're not going to announce a guy's not fired. So my assumption is that he's coming back at this point.
I've heard a couple of people throw out the idea of a passing game coordinator. Has that been anything you've heard? And two, what is that? I don't even know what a passing game coordinator is. Does a passing game call plays, or does he just draw up schemes in practice?
I think it's probably different from team to team depending on the coach. Because just covering the Eagles, so this last year they split up, and it was kind of a disaster. Obviously, they had all these. So Doug Peterson was the main play caller. He didn't hire an offensive coordinator. Press Taylor was the passing game coordinator. I believe Jeff Stoutland was the run game coordinator, and then they had some analysts like Rich Gangarello and Marty Morningweg. So everybody kind of had their own. I think Scangarello focused on the 2-minute drills, and he was working on scheming up that, and on game day he was calling some of those plays, and then you have Press Taylor dealing with. I think it's all situational, and kind of just the general overview of he's the passing game. I think again, I think even the 49ers, that they've split up their responsibilities quite a bit with those guys. I know one of them just got hired away, obviously, but yeah, I mean that's an interesting idea. But if you're doing that's a pretty clear sign that maybe you don't trust Jason Garrett as your offensive coordinator. Anyway, unless you're hiring from outside and it's somebody you're really intrigued by coming available, or if it's a young up and coming, offensive line, maybe I could see it being defensible. But if you believe in Jason Garrett as your offensive coordinator, let him be the offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they do. And, as much as I've been pretty anti-Garrett as I've been any coach, and I try to be level-headed and see their side of things, and they do. So it's not that I think Jason Garrett's a total idiot. I think sometimes that gets lost upon fans. This guy actually does know the game really well. So, hopefully they're self-scouting themselves and they see hey, what we did this year didn't work.
I mean, and the reality is again, just because they get better talent doesn't mean they'll get better necessarily, but he did for a lot of his time in Dallas. They had talent on offense and they scored a lot. So,
right.
They keep talking about how they need to get weapons. Dave Gettleman said he's not going to sugarcoat it, and John Mara says they need to get more weapons. I don't know why they didn't get them last year, but they need to get them. And so if they don't get the right ones, then they're going to be in the same mess they are now. And if they get the right ones, then we'll see if Jason Garrett can do something with them, especially depending on which guys they get. Because if it's a Curtis Samuel, you can really get creative with a guy like that, or if it's Allen Robinson, you can kind of devote the whole offense to him, the passing offense. So it all kind of depends on who they get and if Jason Garrett utilizes them better.
Right.
Yeah, the thing about a passing game coordinator, at least I think as a simple-minded fan, I'm under the impression that the offensive line coach comes up with the majority of kind of the scheming and the technique of the offensive line in terms of run blocking. So then if you hire a passing game coordinator, what exactly is the offensive coordinator doing? So there's that. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball now. Now I've been a Giants fan for a little while, Zach, and typically, in my kind of observation of the team in terms of contract extensions, I'm thinking of Plax. I'm thinking of Odell. I'm even thinking of Victor Cruz when they extended him after his rookie deal. Typically what they do is players that they hold of very high importance, and even this even includes Eli too, players that they hold of very high importance, they don't like to let them get onto the last year of their deal. Now, what I'm thinking of here is Dalvin Tomlinson, Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams was obvious because the tag is the tag. It's a 1-year deal automatically. So they had no choice but to let him go on the last year of his deal. But Dalvin, on the other hand, he's got the C on his jersey. Clearly, he has some sort of value within the organization. They picked up his 5th-year option. He's a very good player, leader on the team. But he went into the season without that contract extension. So is that kind of an impression of Dalvin Tomlinson's possible future? And if it's not, where are you leaning? What are you maybe hearing? What are some things you can tell us about Dalvin versus Leo, or both? Both back.
It's really the only free agency discussion to have with the team, because they don't really, everybody else on that list of their guys becoming free agents, they can live without, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Dalvin thing, on one hand, you're right. Like they could have, if they really liked him that much, they would have probably tried to sign him sooner. But they also, by all accounts, had trade offers at the deadline, specifically from the Packers. And he's a guy going into his last year of his deal. At the time, the Giants were not likely going to sniff the playoffs. Like nobody thought they were going to head that. I think they had 1 or 2 wins at that point. And they declined the offer because of how much they liked Dalvin. So, I've heard people who think that's a sign that they want to keep Dalvin over Leonard. I've heard the other side of it where Leonard is a guy they obviously invested so much in, and then it paid off. And how can you let that guy go? You don't let my whole thing is you don't let all pro caliber players don't grow on trees, so you don't just let them go if you have them in your building, even if they cost, like, you have to pay to keep guys like that. That's just the reality. So I've always been of the mind that I would keep Leonard Williams if I was picking. I honestly can see a scenario where they try and bring them both back. I don't think that would be very smart. Obviously, you don't want to invest too much money in 2 guys whose primary, strength is run stopping defensive tackle. So I just don't see a scenario where they keep both and also go get a wide receiver or edge rusher in free agency. So it's going to be interesting. I've tried to, sniff around and see what's going on, and people haven't really been saying what they think. I really do think they value Leonard Williams. He's going to cost a lot of money. It comes down if they're willing to pay it. On top of, they're probably going to overpay Saquon Barkley too pretty soon. So that has to be factored in. So it's kind of the debate of, do you want $20 million of Leonard Williams, or do you want, $14 million of Dalvin Tomlinson and you get $6 million extra to spend somewhere else? So that's kind of going to factor in there. And, it's a very interesting discussion because both are very good players. I think Leonard is better at more things, but Dalvin is really good at what he's really good at. So I think it's defensible for either one, but for the sake of their pass rush, like they just can't afford to let pass rushers leave. They don't have them. So you get one guy that gets the sacks. You can't let him go and hope that Lorenzo Carter breaks out again, or they get a rookie, or they sign a veteran, because they're not probably going to get like the top edge rusher in free agency. So it's a very interesting debate. I lean on the side of Leonard. I'm not sure. I'm sure Justin leans on the side of Leonard. I'm not sure where Bobby's at with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think everyone's like, hey, Leonard's the better player. Here's the thing, and I don't know what Dalvin's going to get. Like, I can see Dalvin only getting $8 million a year, and I can also see a team being like, here's $14 million a year. So if you can get, you're going to have to spend a ton for Leonard.
The contract I've heard from for Dalvin is the DJ Reader one that he signed last year. I think it was like 4 years, 53. I think that's kind of what people are like projecting. I don't know if that's, a big projection, because obviously his stats don't like jump off the page. So a team would have to really defend to their owner, like, okay, we're signing this guy for a lot of money, but he doesn't really get sacks. So.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Dallas Cowboys people like being like Dalvin Tomlinson. So
did I do good quick math? Is that $13 million a year? Good quick math on my brain?
Yeah, that's like
13 times 4.
$12.25 million a year.
Wow. Whoa, look at you.
Actually, no, it's not.
Oh, see, I just gave you credit.
53. It's $13.25 million.
Oh, love that.
That's a lot of money for a nose tackle. So I don't know.
Yeah, especially when you're bringing back Leonard Williams. I just don't want to see this defense fall apart. That's
and the reason why I think they're probably comfortable with losing one of them if they have to. I think they really like BJ Hill. I think they really like what he showed them this year. I know he was only rotational, but my impression is that Sean Spencer really likes him. I think they'll probably bring Austin Johnson back if they can. I think they like him as a backup. I'm sure Dave Gettleman will be tempted by some hog molly in the draft or something, but Yeah, I'm just like very interested to see what happens there, because especially if you would want them to sign one of them before they hit free agency so their price doesn't go up even more. And so I'm curious to see, if they set whatever that one guy is, do they then try and bring the other guy back or whatever? Like, so it's going to be very, I'm very curious to see how that plays out. That and what they do wide receiver are the two things I'm most interested in, I think.
Right. You mentioned Sean Spencer. Which position position coach through Zoom like really grabbed your attention the most? Because I don't watch him every week, but I try and go through them and find quotes and see if there's anything interesting. Which one like grabbed your interest the most?
Honestly, so I really, before he got fired, Mark Colombo was honestly like,
he was the most open out of all.
Yeah, it was really refreshing talking to him, especially on maybe this kind of rubbed Joe Judge the wrong way. I don't know. It's very. I think they are definitely different. Like they're kind of similar personalities in a way. They're just like hard nosed football guys. But Mark Colombo's not someone who like sugarcoats. He would tell it. Maybe he got too detailed sometimes, and he would tell us specifically what Andrew Thomas was doing wrong, which I don't know if Joe Judge wants other teams to hear. I mean, they can see the film though, so I don't think it's as big of a deal as it's made out to be. But he was like. He was just honest about things, and when they were playing bad, he would say it. And he always, even when Andrew Thomas was struggling, he was really positive about him. But when he left, honestly, DiGuglielmo is just a character. That guy is like talks a mile a minute. He's got a big personality. You ask him one question, he talks for 5 minutes about it. And I do enjoy Sean Spencer. He's a good guy, good personality. He wears a necklace that says chaos on it, just like really embracing his nickname. I'm trying to think.
We love Spencer. It's just I think he could be the next coordinator on the staff right now. My worry is that like he's just hard to understand. He's got that gravelly voice, and like you said, it just like I think in camp Dex was like describing him. He's like he's like I don't know what he's saying half the time.
I think maybe he probably did in New York, but I don't know if he got enough credit for the work he did this year. I think he was maybe one of their best position coaches. He really unlocked.
Yeah.
Like you referenced the stories I read, the Leonard Williams one, I'm sure we're going to talk about. But like one of the biggest eye-opening things is when I talked to Spencer about Leonard, and just first him telling me about like the way he like saw all of the way Leonard Williams struggled before and how he got really famous at the beginning of his career. And then, he had everybody criticizing him, and then he was struggling to live up to his potential, and he just wanted to come in and let him know that he could trust him. And then when I talked to Leonard Williams, he's like, yeah, when I heard that a coach, I've never had a coach that I trusted before, like, because he actually cared about who I was off the field, and then he's not afraid to get after him on the field. Like it was very interesting to hear like that perspective, because you don't really think about that a lot of times. Because these are professionals, they're adults. This isn't college anymore, where they necessarily have to like care about them off the field anymore. And I think Sean Spencer really connected with these guys, and you saw all of them. I mean, BJ Hill had a better year than he did last year. Dexter Lawrence had a better year probably than he did last year, and he's got a lot of potential. I'm very encouraged by Spencer. Yeah, I think he's a rising coach in this league for sure.
Right on. I can just visualize. Not to totally just go back to this, but I was laughing when you talked about Mark Colombo revealing a little too much, because I can just can we imagine that can we create a scenario in our head where part of the reason why Mark Colombo got fired was because Joe Judge was rewatching those press conferences, be like, this guy is an idiot. He does not know, like, this is not what's going wrong with Andrew Thomas. He's an idiot. He does not know what he was talking about. He gets really mad at Mark Colombo. Bobby Skinner, what were you going to say?
Well, I think since we're talking about Leonard Williams, let's talk about Leonard Williams. I mean,
yes,
you mentioned stuff in the story. We have a segment on Friday. It's called Giant Stories. And last offseason, he was the star. I mean, we're envious. We're trying to get him to invite us to his house out in Cali, because I mean, he just lives the life. He like lives on the beach, goes out, goes spearfishing,
jet skis,
eats what he catches, and just like, and then longboards and wakeboards, and just does like basically whatever he wants, and then puts together an 11.5 sack season.
Yeah. I didn't know that part of it from the offseason. I guess I didn't even follow him on Instagram, I realized. But Sean Spencer is actually the one that brought that up, because I asked like what it was like to coach Leonard, and like what he's like off the field. And then he started bringing up how he goes deep sea spearfishing, and he goes in the water and stabs them himself or whatever. And so at that point, we were talking about how hard it is to talk to these guys. Like, it especially with a guy like that, if a guy is going on the podium each week, then they're not going to be available for like one-on-one interviews. So I like requested him that week, and they're like, he'll probably be on the podium. I'm like, all right, well then they let me know pretty much like the day of that I was going to be talking to him over the phone one-on-one. So, and it worked out perfectly. You know, from the beginning, we shot the breeze about the whole fishing thing for a good like 10 minutes. And you could tell he really appreciated, like, he even said at the end, he's like, thank you for not, asking too much about football, like that, taking his mind off. You can just tell he's a guy that has it's not that he doesn't care about football, but he has other interests and a way to get his mind off things. And, he even said like this whole deep spear fishing thing was like really like just calmed his mind down and let him, drown out. Cause he obviously was getting so much criticism, whether it was deserved or not, because of the trade, which he didn't make the trade, obviously. So
I went from Jets fans hating him to the Giants fans hating him all, within, a couple of months.
He just seems like a guy that doesn't really it's a cliche, but he doesn't really actually let anything bother him. He's just like really laid back. And I've been following him. I just realized I only followed him recently. I thought I had been following him, and you just like see all the stuff he's posting. He just has fun and easygoing guy. I think he's well liked by everybody. And yeah, he's a character. Like he's not what I expected, I guess.
Yeah. So when he talks about his growth and his progression from 2019 to 2020, is there a certain specific theme that, either from Coach Spencer that you picked up or that from him you picked up? Is there a specific theme, lesson, technique, something that he did differently to, I don't know, whether it's change his perspective off the field, on the field, that, we saw such a rise in play, or did he just stick to the status quo and stick to who he is? Was it more or less coaching, or was it something different that you picked up in the story that you wrote on why he maybe took such a big jump this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, he also spent some time in the offseason with Richard Seymour. I think that helped him quite a bit. He like watched some film with him and stuff like that. But yeah, I think a lot of it was just mental, and I think that was kind of Sean Spencer's point. Like I think everybody, even people who were critical of him, I think the reason why they were so critical is they knew the talent was there. The talent was always there. He just wouldn't get the sacks, or maybe there's questions about his effort or whatever. Right? I just think this staff found a way to unlock the mental side of things with him. I think the stuff off the field helped him. He cleared his mind a little bit, and then he got a staff that kind of knew how to coach him, knew how to talk to him, knew how to tell him what to do. And I think it was just really all mental. And I mean, if you look at his pressure numbers and his run stopping numbers on PFF and all that stuff, like they were all really good before, like when he wasn't getting sacks. But the reality is when you're a defensive lineman and you don't get sacks, like people are going to point that out.
Yeah.
And he finally got them here, and he repeatedly acted like, he didn't think he thought he was always this good, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he had his best season of his career for sure. And yeah, I just think this coaching staff really does deserve a lot of credit, and he deserves a lot of credit for putting in the work. And, it's going to be interesting to see how he responds when he gets that big contract that he, it's funny. He said at the end of the season, it's not about the money for him. He could retire if he wanted to. He could retire right now and just go deep sea spearfishing or whatever. Which I'm sure his agents didn't love him saying all that stuff. But it like he really is like that. It's not about the money or the fame for him, I don't think, which is very interesting because he's about to make a whole lot of money.
Yeah, Leonard, let us come to your house and go fishing with you, at least just for like one day. Like we're trying to get in there. I mean, I every time I go through his Instagram stories, I'm just jealous. I'm like, just look how clear that water is, and he just cooks up freaking mahi and has like fish tacos, and he lives the life.
He has his little dogs that he loves too.
Yes. I feel bad for them when they're in New York. Like I'm like, man, this sucks. Like you're in like scummy New York with these beautiful animals compared to the West Coast and like down in Miami and everything. So,
well, speaking of dogs, this is why I get paid the big bucks, Zach, because I can do these podcasting transitions. Speaking of dogs, brings up another guy, brings up Logan Ryan, and I feel like everybody on the beat had a ton of communication with him. You wrote some stories on Logan Ryan this year. Logan Ryan had just a fascinating and an interesting year as a whole. For what he went through, the success that he went through on the football field, and some of the adversity that he went through off the football field. But so we're talking about player stories, but I kind of also want to just introduce this a little bit too. And, this is why, again, I thank you for writing these player stories, because particularly with this 2020 Giants team, these are guys that you just want to root for. And I feel like that's what really differentiates why by the time week 17 comes, I don't want the season to end. versus previous years, even though records were still bad. And, regardless whether the Giants were in the playoffs or not, I still didn't want the season to end because you just root for these guys. You root for Blake Martinez, you root for Logan Ryan, a lot of the new guys that came in the team, and are largely also a lot of guys that you write stories on. So Leonard Williams was one. We talked about him. Logan Ryan's another one. Kind of bring us through Logan Ryan's year. And, he's an easy guy to root for. You've had a lot of communication with him. You wrote some stories on him. Bring us through kind of his year and his transition to New York, success on the football field, adversities off, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's very interesting because he almost shouldn't have been on the team at all, if you think about it, because they would not have signed him if Xavier McKinney didn't get hurt, and they wouldn't have been able to afford him if Nate Solder didn't opt out. So
Right.
all the circumstances had to happen for him to wind up here. And if you had asked me in August, is Logan Ryan, at that point he's not on the team yet. Is Logan Ryan gonna, could you see Logan Ryan sign an extension with the Giants before the end of this year? That doesn't even make sense. Why would they even sign him at this point? And he still, nobody knew he wanted to play safety at that point either, because he had only played corner in his career. And then kind of stuff, there were some leaks with Rappaport or whoever, or Schefter, whoever it was, saying that he wanted to be a safety. And then you wonder maybe that's why he hadn't been signed yet, blah, blah, blah. I just think he wasn't getting the money he was looking for. I think he was asking for over $10 million a year. And he wasn't getting that. And then, that what happened necessitated it. The Giants had an advantage with having Joe Judge, who he obviously was fond of from their time together in New England. And then he came in and, I don't know if the season, it wasn't an amazing season, but it wouldn't have been as good as it was if not for Logan Ryan. I think in a lot of ways, he was crucial for a young team. He was the leader on the team. If you think about it, the leaders on this team are guys like Saquon, Daniel Jones, Blake Martinez. These are all guys who are 27, 26, 25, 23, 22. They're all very young guys who haven't had a lot of success in the NFL. Whereas Logan Ryan has won a few Super Bowls and he's made the playoffs. Yet he never had a losing season before this year in his career. Last losing season was his freshman year at Rutgers, which is just wild.
As wild that he was at Rutgers and didn't have a losing season every year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's part of the craziness of it. That's so he just has a track record as a winner. But I don't think anybody could have. Maybe Joe Judge could have because he knew him. But the way he came in and he was just such a part of their every day-to-day thing. He took all these young guys under his wing. I know he drove to practice a lot of times with Darnay Holmes.
Yep.
He took, all these guys under his wing, and he was a big part of even just the way Patrick Graham was able to do what he did with the defense. Logan Ryan's versatility and being able to use him the way he could, and Logan's ability to call things out in the field. And I didn't hear this, but I know Tyler Dunn wrote a story about Logan Ryan that was very good. And there was a detail in there about how he, Patrick Graham would call him late at night to run some stuff by him, bounce some stuff out, ideas off him. And there's nobody else on this roster Patrick Graham could have done that with. That's just the reality. So I think having him, helped unlock Jabril Peppers. They were able to use Jabril in a different way. And all of a sudden the secondary is the strength of his team going into next year. I think you could argue, and they have a big hole there, obviously, but at the top of it, it's probably the strength of this team going into next year, which if you had said that this time last year, you probably would have been laughed out of the room. That secondary was a disaster last year, especially once Janoris left.
Yeah, we like Bradbury, but we didn't expect him to be what he. Our preseason conversations for this team were, can this defense be good enough to let the offense outscore teams like that? Those are because you had, Jones returning off of a strong rookie year, and Slayton, you were excited about him. Shepard is who he was.
There's more questions on defense than offense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when they signed Ross Cockrell, this is huge because it gives us a chance to win because our secondary is so screwed up, and it's crazy, like you said, to where now that it's basically exactly the opposite of what everyone thought would happen with this team.
And I think there were even questions about Patrick Graham because if you just looked at his resume, he only was a defensive coordinator for 1 year, and maybe it wasn't fair to put it on him because he didn't call the plays, but the Dolphins defense was awful last year, and they didn't have very good players either, obviously. But it's not like this defense was littered with Pro Bowlers either, and he obviously came in. And Patrick Graham was probably the biggest surprise for me of the year. He's the team MVP. Just everything. I definitely didn't expect to be talking about him as a head coaching candidate after 1 year on the job with this team. And all the circumstances, just wild. But yeah, just back to Logan Ryan. He became so important that maybe they paid him a little bit too much for a guy who's 30 years old and it could decline. But number one, I think the way they structured the contract looks pretty good. They can get out of it after 2 years. Number two, I just think he was so important to this team that even if he starts declining skill wise, it's important to have those culture setters on your team. And I know Giants fans hate Eagles, and when I ever tweet about them, they get offended for some reason. But one thing they did that led to the 2017 year when they won the Super Bowl is they had all these guys in the building that were like really culture built. They had Jason Kelsey already. They had Zach Ertz. They had Malcolm Jenkins, who is probably the closest resemblance to Logan Ryan, both in terms of their skills and like
Orlando Scandrick.
Like it's important to have those guys while you're not winning getting into the playoffs, and while you're not winning 10 games a year, having these guys in the building, just establish the culture. And there's this cliche of like learning how to win. And I think having Logan is crucial to part of that. And now this whole roster, I think, learned from him this year. I guess they could have survived by losing him, but I think it was smart to bring him back, even if, you're paying him as one of the better safeties in the league. But he definitely exceeded expectation. He was a good player, maybe not a great player, but he was a great leader. And I think I guess I didn't know that about him before he got here.
2 more questions about Logan Ryan. One, how often did his pit bull Leo make appearances on his Zoom calls pressers? How often? Do we know?
No, because the Zoom calls were usually at the facility.
Oh, I must have read something wrong then. That Leo the pit bull, I thought he made some appearances. Darn.
Maybe I can't remember because sometimes the Monday press conference when we'd get them, they'd be at their own place, but I can't remember if we ever got Logan in that.
I also probably can't read. Let's just put it like that. But also the story of how like Logan Ryan has a foundation. You wrote about this. Logan Ryan has a foundation of he helps dogs without a home. And how that story started was stray dogs just somehow wound up in Logan Ryan and Ashley, his wife, their wedding photos. That is the funniest thing I've ever heard. That's so crazy.
Yeah, and it was funny because for the first month he was here, every press conference, without even us bringing it up, he would talk about how he couldn't find a place to live because a lot of places don't like pit bulls. So that kind of motivated their foundation to start talking about breed restrictions. Which I'm a dog lover. I have a dog. The whole idea of breed restrictions is insane. It's about, if the dog's aggressive, then it's aggressive. I don't know if the breed necessarily has to do with it. But anyway, I think it's RARF is their foundation. I think it's worth listeners checking that out to help them out because it's pretty cool what they do. But yeah, it was funny. That kind of Logan, like I mentioned, I kind of referenced this earlier, him more than anybody else showed his personality when he talked to us, where a lot of guys were, I'm sure they got directives of what to talk about and what not to talk about because they would know what questions are coming. Logan, didn't shy away, and he always defended the team, even when they were losing. He pushed back. I asked a question towards the end of the year when they clinched a losing record about how it was his first season with a losing record, and he didn't really like that question very much. It was the reality, but he really was. He loved this team. I think he loves the city. He's from New Jersey. He's from South Jersey, which is obviously a lot different than North Jersey, but he's from this area. I think he probably was surprised by how much he liked to hear too. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you said, every single press conference every week, you could tell he ended up everyone enjoyed it. Did you vote for him for the Media's Good Guy Award?
I did. I can tell you guys what my ballot was. I did. Number 1 was Logan, 2 was Leonard Williams, and 3 was Blake Martinez.
Okay.
Yeah, we do a top 3 is how it worked.
We were thinking about making our own award for beat reporters since you guys do your award for players. But it's just, it's there's no winning if we do that. We're going to offend somebody. You
offend somebody or
Everyone is a winner. Everyone's a winner.
I won't say names, but there's a couple that aren't. So who was so who was not the bad guy, but who was the toughest guy to get something out of this year?
What do you think I'm going to say here?
Besides Daniel Jones.
Okay, yeah.
Besides him just bluffing. That week 17 bluff was crazy.
That was pretty funny, yeah. And then he played it off at that point in the week I was fine. I wasn't fine or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, that was funny because we were talking before the game and I'm like, is there any way they're bluffing? And we're like, no. But I would think of something like that. I would try something like that and then
it was honestly the funniest moment of his career, maybe. I don't know. Besides him tripping after the 80 yards, I guess.
Do we think Daniel Jones is a good poker player?
Yeah, because that dude does not show emotion in any way.
Okay.
I mean, no, he hates talking to you guys. he just
He at
just
least
hates it.
at least would have a good poker face. Like, who knows if he's a good poker player or not? But
he doesn't like the press. And what I also notice is when he has to do events, because get sponsored by Visa to go do something.
It's always awkward.
Well, it's awkward because those are always like kind of corny. And I just realized like anything that's like even remotely corny, he just like wants nothing to do with. Like him and Darnold did the cornhole.
There was a hilarious, I think it was with Matthew Berry, maybe.
Yes, with Matthew Berry.
Yeah.
Like,
oh god,
it
was like so hilarious. It was like so awkward that it was like the funniest thing I've ever seen because he had no interest in answering any of those questions.
He did at the Super Bowl last year. Him and Darnold did like they were sponsoring, like they were part of the cornhole thing, and Sam Darnold's like putting into it, and Jones is just straight up just like this, like just like he could care less about it.
That's why it was kind of funny seeing like obviously the thing that got made into a big deal when he was going out about the town and drinking with his buddies, and now he's like taking trips to Miami with his teammates, and like he just doesn't seem like a guy who's a big partier, but maybe
he is.
Yeah, I know, but I was gonna say, I mean, he's a young. I don't fault him for that aspect of it. But it's just funny because he's just very good at not giving away anything. I mean, I think Eli was like this in a lot of ways. Eli was better at actually, talking to the media and answering questions, but he also was not someone who gave away anything about his person, which is why the whole Twitter thing has been funny with Eli. But like, I don't see Daniel Jones ever getting to that point, honestly. But no,
it's remarkable. Like, it's a skill to like not like bite on any. It's a skill. Like, you can try your hardest to like not care. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know how he does it.
And it's funny because sometimes reporters will try and like be funny at the beginning of a question, or try and show a joke at him. He'll just like do like the awkward like fake laugh for them, and he's like, yeah, no, I don't know.
I did see him get mad one time, and I think it was at Jordan when he was asked about. It was after the injury or something, and then Jordan's like, well, I was actually asking about this. And you could tell he was. I'll have to go back and find it because I remember that was the first time where I saw him like it seemed like he was getting really frustrated because he answered it with like a one-word answer. After
I will say I don't have anything against Daniel by any stretch. So he's obviously a good kid. He's just not very helpful in terms of press conferences.
The quarterback getting something out
of
the
I love that. Like,
you prefer the guy that we're talking to 2 times a week at least. You would hope is a little more entertaining. Like Carson Wentz was also not very fun to talk about. He gave a little more than Daniel, but he also was pretty bland. Nick Foles was pretty fun to cover. I mean, he almost a lot of times you would ask him a question, then he'd go in this whole soliloquy about, he'd make you want to walk out there and attack the world. He didn't actually answer the question, but he made you want to go out and accomplish
talking Giants versus the world.
But it's fun. It's just funny because quarterbacks, you want them to have some sort, even if it's like a combative personality or something like. But whatever. I mean, whatever works for him, I guess. But
I love it. He's a stone cold killer. Stone cold killer.
They don't have any guys that are like dicks on the team. I guess if I can say that. But I would say Kevin Zeitler is one of the more blatant interviews I've maybe ever seen. Like,
we interviewed him and we tried to like get we tried to get him to like joke around. Like, even I was like, who gave the better O-line gift, Eli or Jones? He's like, they were both really. It's like, dude, you could just say Eli. Like, it's okay. I was like, he's not going to be offended. But which is funny because his wife is like the opposite. Like, she is very like, she loves this. She's loud. She buys our shirts and reps them. But I guess that's what they say, opposites attract.
There you go.
Bobby, I want you to ask a very important question about something significant that's happening in your life soon that Zach will not be a part of.
Oh,
and we're mad at him.
Dude, go to the Senior Bowl with me. I'm going to be there by myself.
I honestly, this year would be, especially now that I saw Devontae Smith is going to be there. That'd be cool. What is even like the avail? You're going as media?
Yeah, which is weird.
Is it going to be Zoom calls for interviews, or what are they doing for that?
With interviews, I'm not totally sure.
I imagine
I was looking at the website.
Zoom, but yeah.
But it's like, I think there might be like some like distance stuff, like at the end of practice, maybe like even talking to them from the stands after the practices. There will be some Zoom stuff, which I probably won't even do that. It's like I just want to keep that barrier between me. It's like I started asking real questions, and then
that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I want to go to the Senior Bowl one year because I hear it's a lot of fun to cover. It's obviously going to be different this year, and then I'm sure you guys just saw about this combine going away for the year.
Yeah, that's
honestly not. I mean, it stinks for the players for sure, but from a personal, selfish perspective, I'm not too pissed about it. I didn't really love that event, to be honest with you.
Oh, we loved it. We do Combine week. Like we add an extra episode that week.
It's just too much. It's too much.
We're clipping. But that's where we thrive is when it's too much. We're clipping people's 40 times. I mean, we go all in for Combine.
I will say that my first year going, it was. I mean, I got more used to it as I went to other ones, but the first one I went to, when you go to like the steakhouse, whatever it's called, Prime or whatever, and you're just like walking in there, and you look, and Jerry Jones is down sitting at that table over there, and
I would throw up.
You walk by Mike Vrabel, and there's this guy over there, and Ben McAdoo was schmoozing some people last year, and it's just like just walking by these, like John Lynch walks by, like at first, like I don't get starstruck anymore, but it is like jarring when you just look up and like, oh, there's a so and so, and so that part is like very weird because if you're in that steakhouse late at night during the Combine, the odds are that you're standing next to somebody who either played in the NFL or is a coach or whatever.
Well, you got to give me some tips. How do I like approach the Giants staff at Senior Bowl? Like, do I just walk up and be like, "Hey, I'm
run
Bobby"?
Up to them and hug them or something.
Throw something at them.
Like I was really critical of your angles. No, I bet you. I always wonder what they do think of us because we still are like we do our best to quote unquote cover the team, but we're also fans, so which means we'll show emotion and we'll say things that beat reporters can't say, like screw this guy, because he blew a coverage or something. So I always wonder like what their thoughts of are us. Although we do have a theory that Joe Judge listens because he has mentioned some like deep cuts from the show. I won't go into
Zach. No, I'm going into it, Bobby. We won't go into it. We're going into it because we need to flex this. Do you remember when Joe Judge dropped like a Little Caesars reference?
Don't know.
Nobody that doesn't listen to Talking Giants would remember him mentioning Little Caesars.
Joe Judge dropped a Little Caesars reference, and it was
a week after I told a story about me and a Little Caesars.
Yeah, Bobby fought somebody in Little Caesars.
I didn't fight anybody.
No, you said that was don't lie. That was a story. You fought some. No,
I didn't. I defended somebody who was yelling at a woman in a Little
That's
Caesars.
Right. So you're
a true hero, Bobby.
I know. Yes. Over a handicap parking spot.
Oh wow. Okay, this sounds like a Curb episode.
It's Florida. It was literally Florida. This guy comes into the Little Caesars. Was like
it's a regular Tuesday afternoon. Huh?
Yeah. Was yelling at this lady because she parked in the handicap spot, and I'm like, dude. What would your mother be more disappointed in? You parking in a handicap spot or berating some random lady in the middle of it?
That's actually a great way of shaming somebody. What would your mother be more ashamed about?
I mean, I didn't say that. I was thinking that, but I was like,
oh man, that'd be such, they would take that so personally.
It was like after the Eagles win too, so it was probably our most downloaded episode at the time.
Next time I'm giving like one of my coworkers crap for doing something dumb, I'm gonna. What would your mom be more ashamed about? This bad joke you just made?
Justin better not start pulling that on me.
What would your mother think?
So, and then we said we did a voicemail pod and we put out a 5-minute clip of like, we don't know what Joe Judge thinks of Daniel Jones, and then that day was the day he started praising. So
you're saying
Jones.
You think you guys motivated him to admit that he's sticking with Daniel Jones?
Yes. Am I arrogant a little bit? Yes. But Joe Judge, he listens to Talking Giants.
Are we saying that we did? No. Are we saying that? Didn't. Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
This is where like we say this privately. Like, do they listen? Like that. Because I'm sure they know who we are, but I don't. Yeah. I doubt they're like.
I've gone through that in the past. Like, I'm always curious, like how much of our stuff they're reading. I know their PR people definitely like gather the material, and I'm sure Joe reads a lot of it. Honestly, he's smart.
He's also a people person.
Yeah.
Unlike the other two, the previous ones.
Yeah. I mean, Pat Shermer would put me to sleep during his press conferences.
I thought he was feisty. On Sundays, he was feisty. The rest of the ones,
I honestly don't know if I've ever watched a Ben McAdoo press conference, so I couldn't tell you what his were like. But
you got to look back at the tape, Zach. You got to look back at the tape.
So the funny thing with Judge is like, so some press conferences would be just bland and he wouldn't give us anything, and then you'd have the ones like the Eagles one where out of nowhere, like you don't see it coming, because even within that answer about the Eagles, he started off saying nothing. He started off saying, we had 16 opportunities. And then like something clicked and like you could see it almost in his eyes. And he just started talking like just completely,
F it.
Just going off on them. It was just like, and he phrased it in a way where it didn't seem like he was directly talking about them. And when he would bring up the Eagles again, he'd be like, oh, I'm going to let them speak for themselves. And then he'd crap on them again. And he did that on the radio last week. And it was just, I mean, I enjoy those things when he gets, when he gets fired up. I know Giants fans, I don't know if I agreed with all of the insanity about everybody acting like the Eagles, ruined football and it's never going to be the same now. Or something.
No, they did that a long time ago.
Yeah, no,
But I'm sure.
But I thought that was overblown. But I think Judge was very smart with what he did there. Whether I agree with everything he said almost doesn't matter. Whether he believes it or not. He said what the fans and his team wanted to hear. I'm sure, and I think he very much knew what he was doing there. And the whole.
Oh yeah, players love that. And I think people forget what the mind of this person has played sports their whole think about your mindset of playing sports, like what you were willing to do to win, and just know that that guy's 30 years old, but it never stopped for him. Like it's I don't know, it's kind of crazy. Do we have anything else? We're about it at we're almost an hour in, Justin. I know we want to talk about Darnay Holmes a little bit. But...
Yeah, but well, it's just an excuse to have Zack Rosenblatt on again to talk about more players. Do you have any off-season stories kind of maybe lined up? I don't know what your schedule looks like. I don't know if you like to put out certain in-depth player pieces out in the off-season because maybe not a lot of people are tuned out. So do you have anything coming up that maybe you can preview for us in terms of player exclusives, whatever?
This time of the year is a little weird just because, especially when the season ends for your team that you're covering and there's still playoffs going on, nobody really cares all that much about profile pieces. So I'm not doing them right now. I'm certainly always working on stuff. So right now I'm just writing stuff about the off season, and I've written stuff recently. I dove deep into this receiver class and free agency in the draft, talked to some experts. I have another thing coming out about receivers tomorrow. I'm going to be writing a lot about receivers this offseason, I imagine. So just going full steam ahead on that. The one I can tease, I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but
tomorrow
on Tuesday. Yeah. So on Tuesday, the one I kind of, so there's a lot of teams that need this receiver class is so deep in part because a lot of teams could be letting these guys go. So there's a lot of teams that the Giants are going to be competing against to sign these receivers. So I thought I decided I was going to compare them to all the teams that had obvious receiver needs and how appealing they are compared to the other teams, whether it's factoring in cap space, the quarterback, blah, blah, blah. So I that's the angle I went with tomorrow. And at some point I'm going to look at this edge rusher class and free agency and the draft and kind of going to be hitting a lot of the Giants needs over the next few weeks, I would say, leading up to free agency.
Well, good stuff, Zach. Thank you for a good year of work. Thank you for joining us. It's at ZACK Blatt BLATT, correct?
Correct.
I got it. How about
Zach,
that?
I owe you a pizza. I don't know why or how.
It was
because Mark Colombo.
Because I asked Colombo about
yes.
Yeah.
Which that's a shame.
Which in retrospeect you probably aren't as happy about now, I guess.
No.
His band sucked, and so does heavy metal. I always towed that line.
Wow. Fighting words for Justin there.
Thought it was great. It was the best part one of the best parts of the offseason.
So before I finished that story I wrote about him and then I heard them pplaying the song at practice that one day.
Yeah. Did they really?
None of the other beat writers knew about it because I'd listened to it 100 times because I was writing that damn story. So I'd heard it. I was hearing it in my dreams at that point. And then they played it. I'm looking around and nobody's what? And then I immediately DM'd Justin. I'm like, dude, they just played the song. I didn't want to tweet it out because I didn't want people to be spoiled about the story I was working on, but it was very funny. They clearly were doing that to mess with them.
Brought me joy. Brought me so much joy.
Joe Judge was just trying to get him to fight him for like a 4 or 5 week span.
One step away from fighting him.
Yeah. All right. Well, Zach, before we get you in trouble, thank you for coming on. Make sure to go follow Zach and follow his work. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. It's fun.
All right. Thanks again, Zach. Make sure to go follow Zach. Do it. He's done a really good job, especially his first full year on the beat, and with not that daily access, that locker room access that they so desperately use. So I appreciate Zach. Justin, you got anything else before we end this dang thing?
No. Thank you very much to Zack Rosenblatt. Go give him a follow. Do what you got to do. Subscribe to NJ.com. I just did it today, by the way. If you want to pay some money, sure, if you got it. But yeah, a lot of fun. Bobby Skinner, you are going to the Senior Bowl. You're leaving Sunday morning.
Yep, I'll be there. During the end of the conference championship games, I will be in Alabama.
Exciting week of Talking Giants next week.
Well, and Friday is going to be exciting too. We got our wide receiver review if no big news happens. So that look forward to the wide receiver review, which I think is going to be a little might get a little heated. I don't know why, but it seems like the wide receivers we may get a little heated. I don't know why.
No, we don't care. Do we care about Golden Tate? He's done, right?
Yeah, but we're going to talk about him.
I'm not going to get heated. I'm not going to get heated over a guy that's done. And I think we both have
Dante Pettis.
We're both very. You want Dante Pettis to be number 2 next year, Bobby?
At least deserves a shot. All right, let's end this episode. All right, we appreciate you guys. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, let's go Big Blue.